Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Chris back with the Bimmer barn, and today we're going to be getting the 335i back on the road. Before we do that, I'm going to be showing you the N54's most fatal cooling flaw and how we can fix it. And then we're going to get the engine bay cleaned up, get everything bolted back together, and we're going to take it for a test drive after all of the service that we just did. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and without further ado, let's get straight to work. So if you saw my video where we broke down everything that was wrong with my Mechanic Special 335, then you'll notice that I already covered the fact that these radiator hoses, they turn brown, they get dry, brittle, and then they start cracking really easily. So as preventative maintenance, we're gonna go ahead and replace these hoses before they break and before they leave us or the next owner stranded on the road. So now we're going to be removing the Mickey Mouse hose, as I call it, and to give you guys a better look, I'm going to be removing the oil lines from the oil filter stand and also the fan, and that should give you guys a good view, as you can see here. As I'm pulling this hose out, it literally falls apart in my hands and half of it is left inside of the block. So if you're servicing this hose, make sure that you clean out the block, that there's no gunk or plastic left in there. And here's a good view of the connector and how it just broke into pieces. Now there's two ways to get this adapter off. You could either try to use a Dremel on the band clamp around the outside of the connector, or you could just use a pair of pliers if yours is old and brittle like mine, and just squeeze it until it breaks into a million pieces. If you do this method though, make sure that you keep track of those pieces. You don't want them falling back into the coolant hose. So make sure that you shake the coolant hose out and don't let any of that plastic into the cooling system. So these three components on the N54 I see fail all the time, and this is what I would call a fatal flaw, because if any of these hoses breaks like you see here, it could leave you stranded on the side of the road. Just filling the car up with coolant isn't going to get you anywhere. The car would overheat, it would just leak everything out. You're going to have it towed to a shop. So do your preventative maintenance, and in this case, Rain actually came out with an aftermarket adapter that replaces the Mickey Mouse hose with an aluminum flange that will never break or deteriorate. So they include a clamp. You're gonna go ahead and use this on the factory hose. You can reuse the original one from the car, or if yours is in really bad shape, you could buy a new one and just start over with that. But it goes together really simply, and then installing it back on the car is easy as well, and you'll never have to worry about this hose popping off again. And here we're going to be replacing the expansion tank. I also mentioned this in the previous video. These things like to split right down the middle. And in my case, the fluid level indicator was broken inside, so I decided to replace it. And so to the trash it goes. So while I have the expansion tank removed, I'm going to go ahead and replace all the vacuum lines on this side of the motor. Now these things tend to get dry and brittle from years of heat, and they'll cause boost issues. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting them all to length with my new hose, and then I'm going to route it inside the engine bay the exact same way it was from factory. This is definitely something you should consider doing if you have a 335i so that you don't run into any issues in the future. So here's a good before shot of the engine bay in all of its dirtiness before I got into cleaning it. Now I'm using this new foaming engine degreaser spray I've never tried before. Weirdly enough, it smells like WD-40, but it does a very good job of loosening up oil and dirt and grime and grease and all that sort of stuff. And then once all that gunk is loosened up, I was able to pressure wash it off really easily with my little pressure washer. And then I use some compressed air to get as much water out of the engine bay as possible, because you don't want this stuff soaking into anything or getting in electrical connectors, which ended up being a problem for me later. So be careful using water in your engine bay. Like anything like a hose or a pressure washer could cause electrical issues, so you want to be gentle with it. So now that we're all done with that service on the motor, I'm ready to fire it up and take it for a test drive. But because we did the oil filter stand gasket, the car is probably a little low on oil, and I only have one oil change kit. So I ran out to the local Walmart and I got some oil. So we're gonna top it off, maybe put like half of a quart in really quick. And then we're gonna start the motor up and make sure that it runs all right. Now stay tuned, because in another episode, we're gonna be doing the automatic transmission service, and I hope that it clears up some of our transmission issues. But for now, I just wanna see how the engine's running since we did our walnut blasting, our cooling system overhaul, our spark plugs, our valve cover gasket. All that stuff is finally done, so we can take it for a drive now. Let's go. So I don't know what the issue was. You might have seen it had a kind of a rough start for a second there. I cleared the codes out, and the only codes that came back was like a Vanos activation code for the intake side. So to determine if that was like a real issue or not, what I did was I took the Vanos solenoid from the intake and I swapped it with the one from the exhaust, because they're exactly the same. And then I wanted to see if the issue followed the solenoid, which it didn't. Now I did clean the solenoids. They were a little oily, dirty. Clean them up real nice, and now the car is running 100% with no intake Vanos codes or anything like that. So I'm gonna let it warm up a little bit more. I'm gonna have my flashlight on, inspecting it to make sure we don't have any leaks or anything weird going on. And then I'm gonna take it off the lift and we'll take it for a drive. Now, if you're wondering how to do a coolant flush without turning the motor on, it's pretty simple. You're gonna put the key to position 2 like I have it already with all these lights on. And then we're gonna go ahead and turn the AC on to full blast. You don't actually need full blast, I'm kidding. But we'll put it to 1 bar, but the heat has to be on. So let's go ahead, turn the heat all the way up. And we've got 1 bar right here, key position 2. And I'm gonna put my foot on the accelerator pedal for 10 seconds. And if I hold that down, the water pump should come on and it should start circulating the water in the system. You can hear it right there. So as you can see, the water is coming through. Now I'd recommend having this bleeder valve closed if you're doing this method. You'll see the water coming through here, and the water pump cycles, so it's gonna go on, off. But since you see that the little indicator is not floating, it's all the way at the bottom there, I'm gonna go ahead and put a little more coolant in. That way we'll have this system topped off. Now if you hear that noise, that's the water pump, and personally I don't know if that sounds healthy. That little rattling is not common for these pumps. So it might be an indicator that we need to replace ours, and if you have this sound going on, you probably should replace yours too. So once your cooling system is fully bled, you should be able to start the motor with the cap off, and remember, this should stay tightened. And then this should be your indicator of your fluid level. So you can see it's a little bit over the edge of the rim here, but it's not all the way extended up. So it's right halfway. And you can see that we have a constant stream of water coming out of our expansion tank upper hose. And that means that there is no more air bubbles left in the car. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the cap on, and then we're gonna go for a drive. Now this might just be a placebo effect, but I already feel like the car is more responsive, just revving it at idle. Alrighty guys, so driving impressions are that it drives good and it goes in a boost. So I'll give you a quick pull here so you guys can see. And so to recap, we had an issue with the Vanos before. We had a code come on, and honestly, I think it was a result of cleaning the engine bay and pressure washing it so much. I think we may have gotten some degreaser or water in those electrical connectors. So while I was pulling those Vanos solenoids out, I went and cleaned the connectors for the camshaft and the crankshaft position sensors. And that went and solved our problem, so we don't have any more limp mode. The car goes in a full boost now. It's very happy, and I'd say that the car is running a lot better with those clean intake valves. So that is going to conclude today's video. We still have a lot of work left to do on the 335. We're going to be doing an automatic transmission service on this car next, so if you want to see that video, stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I notice a lot of you guys, about 75% of the viewers on my videos, are not subscribed, so if you would just consider clicking that red button down below, I would really appreciate it. Go ahead and like if you want to help support the channel, and comment down below what you think the N54's true weak spot is if it's not the cooling system, in my opinion. I hope everyone has an awesome day, and we will see you in the next video.